Well, hello everybody again. It is December. It is the 16th, and it is time for another flute lesson. I love these lessons. I think they're really fun. I love presenting them, and I hope you guys are learning something as you are watching them and listening to them. We are trying to cover the whole gambit of what does it take to actually play the Native American flute. If I was to sit down with you one on one, what I would do is I would give you exercises and I would have you go out and practice exercises and come back and listen to them and then kind of reshape, how you're playing and maybe tune a little differently, how maybe blowing, working like that. But I don't have the ability to do that when I'm distanced from everybody and a large scale audience like this where I'm just talking to a lot of different users who are playing a lot of different things. The ability for to be able to check and spot check on what you guys are doing is not as easy as you would think. So what I'm hoping for at some point as you guys are playing is to maybe get some feedback from you and just to hear what you guys are learning, hear what you guys are doing, and actually hear how you guys are performing and playing because that's going to help at least kind of guide a little bit of where these lessons go. It's also going to help me understand if you guys are actually building up your skill sets the way I want you to, or the way they should be doing it. Not necessarily how I want you to, but how the best way for you to, as a performer, can be able to build your skill set because we all learn differently. We all approach things slightly off and slightly differently from each other. The thing that a mentor has to do is try to take a look at how the person is consuming the information that they're giving, how they're practicing, how they're utilizing it, and then hopefully steer into some different directions, things that maybe give you good practices. Not necessarily try to change your mind or any try to, make you go, oh, wow, that's something I never really thought of beforehand. But it's just trying to get you to guide into an idea that will allow you to become a better utilizer of the information, right? So if that's music, then it'll help you be a better performer. If that's artistry, help you be a better craftsman or whatever it is you're doing. If that's trade school, help you be a better skilled asset to whatever it is you're doing. If it's education, it's just helping you to be a better student and all that type of stuff. So hopefully, what I can do here is listen to some feedback that you guys are giving. Let me, hear what you guys have to say. Let me see what's going on inside your world. And as I hear that stuff, and as I kind of go through and say, oh wow, that's what you're doing. That's really cool. I can say, wonderful. Let's keep going down this road. Let's keep you moving and engaging properly. Now, as always, we're going to review what we've learned in the past couple of lessons because that's important. Review is so important to help you maintain and understand what it is that you're learning and also kind of keep that information in the back of your head. That's sometimes just kind of drifts off into space. If you're like me, a lot of times you'll get stuff in here and then all of a sudden it kind of really kind of moves and goes away. Without review, it's just, oh, it's yeah, I remember learning that one time. I remember thinking about that. It's kind of cool. I don't think about that anymore. I don't remember that, but it was good. I had it there one time. So that's what we're going to try to do. That's why we always go back at least two lessons to review what we did back in the last two lessons. In 2 lessons ago, wow, we're on lesson 8, which means back in lesson 6, 2 lessons ago, we talked a lot about the idea of the notes of the upper hand. So holes on the flute, right? We have our notes. We have our fingers here, right? We talk about first position, everything's covered, right? First, second, third, fourth, fifth is what we introduced. 6 is what we introduced. So we introduced the top 2 notes. And we talked about the notes of that hand and how this creates a minor pentatonic scale, right? The minor pentatonic scale, that's what gets created by using these notes. And then how we talked about the names of the notes as well. So we went with first is all covered, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And we talked about the fifth and sixth and how there's names of those up there as well. Now, I'm using a different flute than I did beforehand. I usually use my B flute, but I wanted to change it up today and use my E flute to show you the names of the notes on the E flute, right? So the pattern for the lower hand is all the holes covered. First position is the name of the flute. So this is E. Then, like we talked about, we jump over the next letter and go to the letter afterwards to get our next note. So our first position is going to be that skip. So this is E. We're going to jump over F and we're going to get to G. And then we're going to go to A, B. Okay, and now because of this note, because of this finger here, which is our anchor finger, we'll refresh that in a second. Because of our anchor finger, we're going to jump over the next note and we're going to get to this note here. So we're going to jump over, this is B, we're going to jump over C, get to D, and then E. E is our sixth position, which is E. It's the octave of the all holes covered. E, jump over, G, A, B, jump over C to get to D, and back to E. And that's the pattern, right? We get the name of the note, or the name of the flute. Sorry, we get the name of the flute. That's a first. Second, we jump over whatever the next letter is, and we get to the next letter. So an E, we're jumping to get to G. Next A, the next B. So we're going right up the notes. Then we jump over this note here. So this would be C, and we're going to jump over to D, and then we get back to E. Okay, and that's the names of the notes of the flute. And we talked about that with the upper notes and how important it is to know the names of the notes of the flutes. If you're in the A flute, like a lot of people are when they first start off, we have A, we jump over the next letter. So from A, we jump over B and get to C, and then C to D to E. Now we're going to jump over F to get to G and go back to A. That's going to be our notes. That's if we have the A flute. If we have a G flute, we go G, jump over the next letter. We get to B flat. It's actually a B flat. Now, again, don't worry about accidentals. I'll walk you through all the accidentals. B flat, C, D, jump over the E of some sort, whatever that would be. We get to F, and then we get back to G. And that's how the notes of the G flute would work. F sharp flute works the almost exact same way, right? Where it's the same patterns, we're just using different notes. So we go F sharp, jump over whatever the next letter would be, which would be G. So we can jump up F sharp, go to A, go to B, go to C sharp. Remember, don't worry about accidentals. I'll let you know about the accidentals. C sharp. We jump over D, go to E to F sharp. And that's how the notes work on the upper hand of the flute, is we have that same pattern going on all over the place. And this is the minor pentatonic scale pattern. Start with a letter, jump over, go to letter, 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 jump over, letter, letter. That's the name. That's just the pattern. It's very simple, very easy. And the reason why we jump over the last one on our flute up here is because we have this anchor finger, and this anchor finger stays here, right? It is the fourth finger. If we go first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth finger, if we talk our fingers in the way of numbers, right? Our fourth finger is the anchor finger. It just stays there. It is always anchored. Now, will it always stay there? No. There are notes you can use and play by removing your anchor finger, but for the most part, as of right now, we will keep the anchor finger there. It's always going to be there. The anchor finger stays. It is just there. The anchor finger stays there. Okay, we're not going to worry too much about the other stuff yet. We will get to it at some point, but right now it is the anchor finger and it's going to stay. So with that being said, the anchor finger stays, and that's how we get our minor scale going up and down. Easy as pie, right? Should be. It's not that difficult. And the nice thing about once you understand the notes and how the notes work going up and down is you can start creating patterns for those notes for you to be able to play. And we talked a little bit about that as well 2 weeks ago and last week, creating these patterns that allow us to play the notes of the flute in a nicer way, into a way that people can consume and they can understand, and that the audience, your audience, whoever it is that you're going to play for, may enjoy, right? That's one of the things we're going to do. I'm going to take a drink of water and jump off the camera real quick. Drink of water. I love water. Helps me stay hydrated and also helps me keep talking. So I love water. But more so, we're going to talk about the patterns, right? Creating patterns for the flute. And why that is important, because patterns will help you do a couple things. First, they'll help you build up finger control and actually help you learn how to put placement on the flute holes much easier and get a much solid sound. So finger control. It's also going to help you build muscle memory. Now, muscle memory is an interesting thing because muscle memory is something that happens after you repeat things over and over again. If you think about like athletes, right? A pitcher, right? As he's pitching the ball, he will keep doing that motion over and over and over, and he just repeats the motion. And over time, that motion just kind of sticks in his mind. He doesn't have to think about it. He just does it. He doesn't have to worry about when he's going to release the ball or where his fingers are, or how much it curves or how much it curls, and how where his wrist turns. In the beginning, you do think about that. You worry about all that type of stuff. But after you do it for a couple hundred times, it just becomes part of who you are. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's part of the memory in your muscles. Your muscles have a memory. Same thing with instruments. As we're playing the flute, as we're playing, these notes and everything like that, you end up, if as you do it over and over and over again, you end up kind of memorizing. This is how my fingers work. This is just how it naturally happens. And you don't have to really think about it anymore. Even when you switch flutes or transfer from one, song to another. The idea is your fingers actually will start to remember. They'll recall things themselves. That's muscle memory. It's the repetition over and over of ideas that allow your fingers and allow the muscles to remember what's going on. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's just the muscles remember it. And it's part of your brain cognitive process and all this other kind of crazy stuff that goes on. But for the time being, we call it muscle memory because it's much easier to call it muscle memory than it is to call it some sort of like symbiotic cognitive distillation of whatever the idea is. But the concept is very simple and very sound. It's muscle memory. So for us, in order to engage muscle memory inside of what we're doing, we want to create patterns that allow us to build up this kind of muscle memory. A very simple pattern, ascending and descending. And if I turn on my metronome, which we've talked about metronomes in the past, I'm not going to do any of that stuff, but I'm going to turn on metronome and actually have eighth notes going on, so you can hear the eighth notes happening of my beats, or not necessarily eighth notes, but subdivision. I'm going to call this first beat quarter notes, and then we'll call these eighth notes, so the idea of subdivision. But if we have this thing and we create an ascending pattern, I'm just going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So first position, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I'm going to go up quarter notes and then come back down on eighth notes, right? So it's going to be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The idea. Okay, so we create this pattern. 1, 2, ready, go. Now, the reason why I want to use this flute is because I want to show off a little bit of the issues of why we do this. You'll hear when I do my actual, it's my third position. Sorry. When I do my third position, I actually slide a little because my finger, for some reason, doesn't like to cover the hole. This finger has a hard time covering this hole. These holes are a little bit bigger. And so it slides into it instead of being clear. Now, the reason why that's important is because even though that's a cool technique to get a note, we don't want that. I don't want that right now. I want to have that solid sound. So I know that's something I have to work on, which is the reason why I create this pattern. We'll do this pattern again. 1, 2, ready, go. That was much better that time. And the idea is, as you hear these patterns and repeat them and practice them over and over again, you may find your fingers doing something like I did, where you have something like this. Right? You have that not quite solid, and you just work on trying to get it to be solid. And the more patterns you create for yourself, the easier that's going to be to practice. It's much easier practicing patterns than it is practicing just single individual notes, right? This kind of gets boring. I mean, it's good, but it just kind of gets boring after a while. So practicing a pattern like an ascending or descending pattern makes it a little bit more interesting. And I like jumps and skips, which is why, I also do that pattern. That's, we go with first, then we go to third, then to second, to fourth, then to fifth, to sixth. Wow, I jumped that whole thing around. So first to third, to second, to fourth, to third, to fifth, to fourth, to sixth. That type of pattern. I like jumps like that because it sounds better. It sounds interesting. It sounds a little bit more. It just sounds a little bit more interesting, right? So. you hear again, like there's certain notes in there that probably need to be tightened up a little bit, maybe worked on a little bit more. And that's part of the idea of practicing is once you're creating these patterns, you're able to see where some of these gaps are, see how you can maybe tighten up the screws a little bit, make it so it's a little bit more refined as you're playing. Sometimes you may like that stuff. Maybe you like the idea of the sliding notes or um the misentering and then fixing, right? Maybe it gives you a little bit more interesting of an approach to a song. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually not a bad technique. It's an interesting technique. But it's something like if we really want to start off, we probably should be a lot more solid on our sounds than me just kind of slide into things. And that's where we ended up with our last couple lessons was creating patterns, creating understandings with like the beat context and helping us build a more solid sound. One of the other big things that we talked about last week, and especially it goes along with this pattern concept, is the idea of phrasing. And we really only spent a little bit amount of time on the idea of phrasing. And phrasing is really important because phrasing is the way that we communicate music in the world at large. Think about music as a language for a second. Now, language allows us to communicate and allows us to interact with other people and allows us to be expressive, allows us to maybe convey an idea or convey a message that we weren't able to, just do without silence. Language is a way for us to express something, and that's the important thing. Music is a language, right? So music allows us to express things, and like any language, being expressive is broken up into individual styles. It's broken up into individual characteristics. Your way of expressing is a lot different than my way of expressing. I'm going to say something and you say the exact same thing, and we're going to sound completely different, right? If you think about, oh, I don't know, what's a universal thing like the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States, right? My pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Uh, how I say it and how you say it may become two different things. If you served in the military and you have a different, deeper understanding of what the flag means to you than what it means to me, then you're going to have a lot more passion around it than what I may have. If I have being adopted coming from another country into this country, the flag means something different to me than what does to maybe people who grew up here in this nation. And so that I might say it just a little bit different. The idea of expression is the ability for you to say something the way you want to say it and have it be your voice. And that's cool. We want your voice to ring through. Now, when we talk about expressive nature of the flute, oh, excuse me. Oh, I don't know where that came from. Apologize for that. When we talk about the expressive nature of the flute, what we're talking about really is a couple things. Your sound, that's your tone, and then how you say things, how you phrase things. Your tone is going to come as you practice, right? It's going to come and it's going to sound just the way you sound. Right, that's my long tone. That's my long tone of this flute. Your long tone of this flute would sound a lot different than mine would, just because we're two different individuals, two different types of breath, two different types of finger positions. It may sound like pitch-wise, it may sound universal, but you can definitely tell when a different player is playing because of the tone of their flute. Now, the other side of that, just tone side, the expression side, is this phrasing side. And this is you connecting and disconnecting notes when you want to. Think of going up the scale again, right? So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Now, maybe I want to break those up into different patterns and have different ways to connect the notes together. you can hear how those different connections mean something to that kind of phrase or the expression, right? It doesn't know if what I'm saying is going to be understood or if I'm even trying to say anything like important there, but you can hear how those note connections actually do create a way to sound more different, sound more unique. Let me phrase it slightly differently this time. Again, it's just a different way of connecting notes together and creating a different type of idea, right? Can one note be a phrase onto its own? Yeah, sure, why not? Now, I added a new note that you haven't heard before, or we haven't introduced into the scale before, but even still, adding that new note all of a sudden gives it like a slightly different I feel, a slightly different idea of expression. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about these ideas of expression, right? Now, there's another thing that goes along with the idea of connecting notes together, which is also really important, and that's the idea of attacking the note. Actually, there's actually two sides of it. There's an attack and there's a release. Attacking the note is how we initially start the note. It's how we make the first note sound. And we probably should have talked about attacking in before we ever started talking about anything else because it's kind of how you produce the sound. But for the most part, we're here. This is where we're putting it because it is part of expression more than it is maybe part of actually sound generation. But attacking though is important. The first attack we learn is kind of a sigh attack. Now, if we were to go, we just sigh, that air. That's how we breathe into the flute. Take a breath in, and then we just sigh into the flute. Now we hold the note a little bit longer, so it's like we actually, don't just sigh everything out. But the idea is the same approach. It's in and it's a very easy sigh. And that's like the very first attack we learn. It's a very gentle attack. It's a very subtle attack. If you notice, it's not really like a precise. It's not a harsh attack. It's just a very it's kind of like a hum or just an easy blow type of attack. It's nothing too difficult. And more than anything, it's kind of like an ooh. Ooh. Now, the next attack that we can talk about is a little bit more harsher. It's a little bit more precise, and that's just putting a puff in front of it. So instead of going ooh, we go ooh, ooh, ooh. It's like just a little bit of gust of wind, not too much, just a little bit more intense, so that you get a little bit preciser sound. Think about it in terms of saying the word who, 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 right? Who isn't like really harsh. It's just who. It's just a little bit more pronounced, right? Now I'm actually doing that on purpose. I'm not covering my fingers all the way to get that kind of whistle sound because I want you to hear that the way that the who kind of works in. Now, one of the big things with a who attack is there's also a release to it, right? It's a who, 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 where our sigh doesn't really have a hard release. It's just a, and the release is how we get the notes off, right? It's how we kind of stop the note, how we stop the sound production. There is no harsh sound release on the, it's just a sigh into it, right? Sigh. just kind of fades out. Where the who does have a who, 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 where we do kind of have that little stop ending at the end of it. So the who. And that stop is a cutoff. We actually use that as a cutoff. So we have a trail off, which is just the, but we also have a strict cutoff, which is the, we just stop our breath. Now, we're just talking about the breath here. We're not talking about any type of really tricky, attacks or releases by using anything else other than our breath. So we just have these two for the most part right now. We will be talking about some other ones here because the attacks and releases are really like a staple and a hard core idea of how you can create expressions that are meaningful. But what I want you to do is I want you to go back to your exercises, and just start attacking your exercises and trying to see if you can do something that maybe breaks up your exercise a little bit. So first off, we've been playing with the sigh, so that should be no different. We're going to go up and down using just the sigh, and it's no different. We're not attacking every note. We're going to connect the notes going up and down, but we're going to use the sigh. Okay. Nothing too difficult, nothing too crazy. We've been doing that our entire time. So now let's add the who attack and actually see if we can separate let's go every two. So we're just going to separate who, 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 who. Okay, every two we're going to separate the who. And you can hear the difference there. Who, 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 who. Okay? 1, 2, ready, go. I forgot to move my fingers. 1, 2, ready, go. It's different. And the thing about this is now that we're starting to play around with the attacks and these releases, we can make phrases that sound a little bit more unique, a little bit more individual to us, because we can create this who and this ooh attack to allow us to connect notes together, right? So ooh. Those are just sighs, nothing too crazy, nothing too precise. But now we add a who in there, and we're going to make things sound a little bit more precise. Right? There's a subtle difference, but once you start understanding and listening to that, you can start saying, oh, well, okay, I can see how that connection can be made. And that way, now when you're creating a melody or creating a phrase that you like and you enjoy, you can add and subtract phrases, well, not really subtract phrases, but start different phrases by creating these two different types of attacks for you. And that's the importance of attacks, is allowing you to be able to connect these phrases and start them and end them slightly differently. The whole idea of expression is playing around with how the notes that you've learned are important, but also how you can make your breath more of an instrument in terms of attacking and releasing the notes. And that's going to allow you to become a lot more expressive inside your music, is learning about these attacks and learning about these phrases. Now, we will be talking about some more attacks, and we will be talking about some more notes, and we'll be talking about some more phrases, more expression tools, because these are all important in order for you to become a better performer. But for the time being, we'll start with these two attacks in these two releases. The Sigh attack and release, which is just blowing in and letting it come out, trail off, right? And this who attack in this kind of stopgap of the air. Who with the air going, when you're stopping breathing. Who, who. Play around with those. See how they can work for you. See how you can make them into your own. And then, as you're doing that, you'll start learning more techniques, starting to learn more things. And as you play around with it more, you'll start seeing how all the stuff can start tying in together to creating more musical passages for you. I guess, we're out of time. I was just looking at the clock. I was going to add some more, but we're out of time. And so I hope, for the next couple of weeks, that you keep practicing, you keep playing your flute because the flute's awesome. Start playing around with these tacks, start making more expression, play music for yourself, create your own stuff because that is the best part about being a musician. And I will see you in the first of the month. So awesome. Thanks.